Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Worth the Hype, right? So we have a very special week ahead. So we're releasing a special episode in the weekend because we do have several backlogs that we need to clear, and another episode is going to be launched on Tuesday for something very exciting as well, right? So as you can see from the title, we're going to talk about the WH&Co X Selten, sorry, right? I hope that's pronounced correctly. So in Cantonese means meet or gather, right? Or in Mandarin, 聚, right? So as you can see from the photo, as you can see, that person in middle, in between Swiss Beats and Alicia Keys, that's Jackie Ho. So for those who are not aware of as well, Jackie Ho is I would say, a prominent collector from Hong Kong. Most of you would have known him for his collections of Roths, right? His DR, Daniel Roth. Amazing collections of Roth and other independents as well. And he has his own club slash community called WH&Co. And this is their second anniversary watch in collaboration with Selten, right? The Selten, WH&Co X Selten, sorry. And why we're excited to talk about this is because it is like the definition of hype, right? As you can see, it's being owned right now with Swiss Beats and Alicia Keys. And it's a piece that is something we find really interesting as well, right? Over the right, that's how the entire package comes off with the art commissioned by one. Hold on, let me just get this
1 hour watch.
1 hour watch. That's correct, right? And you get the whole set with a letter by Has No Bounds as well. Right. So a little bit of background of the watch or Selten in general. For those who are not aware of, Selten is a Hong Kong-based brand, started off in 2017, and this particular watch, it's as you can see, it's made with Tahitian mother of pearl, black mother of pearl that is CNC engraved, right? The design, it's very much inspired by ancient China, where soldiers wore body armor with repeated design over there. And in this case, what Jackie has in mind is that this repeated design, each one of them represents a collector, right? You, me, and everybody around in the watch circles gather um, to really enjoy this particular hobby of horology, right? So to just really sum things up together, the watch represents the second anniversary. As you can see in the second hour marker as well, it is marked with a 2 in Chinese character, and behind you will see various engraving as well, which is incredibly meaningful. And each one of this represents a collector and how it brings everyone together in the enjoyment of the watch hobby, right? And I think that's incredibly meaningful, right? Not just a run of the mill special limited edition color or a special minor engraving and slap on a second anniversary watch and call it a day, right? There's quite a lot of thought process and intricate details that are being placed in this watch, which something that really resonates with Woody and I, right? But yeah, before we continue further, anything you want to add in, Woody?
I remember when this watch first came up and it hit the Instagram feed, right? I was actually quite stunned by what's possible because it could be a phase of where I'm going through, and we've had conversations about this as well. It's a nice touch of color, but there's so much intricate detail on the dial as well, and I'm like, wait, who came up with this now, and where did this come from? So it's a very interesting thing, and I'll be very honest, I've not heard of either party in this collaboration prior to this watch dropping, right? So it made for a very interesting splash, literally, right? When it first came up, watch community started talking about it, and if for credit that's quite deserved as well, because it's actually not easy to make a splash from a execution perspective, and the hype in itself doesn't, at least to me, even the whole Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats thing just flew right over my head, right? Didn't pay attention to any of it. It was more like the fact that someone came up with this and was able to execute it really well. That's what made me interested to look at it. But other than that, I think it's worth, the rest of my points will come in our episode.
Great. All right. So jumping straight into the scoring, right? So one thing to also note as well, we are creating this episode on as of today. It's 5th of September, right? Unfortunately, the pre-order window has closed. is on 13th of August for only 72 hours window available for pre-order. However, better late than never. So we're talking to you about this, but the only way you can look for it is if someone is willing to give up their spot, or you can look for it in the secondary market. Right. However, there's also the third year, fourth year, fifth year, and many more for the future anniversary watches to look forward to. Right. So this is to really ensure that you keep your eyes open on future Watch and Co collaboration. And this is not their first rodeo as well. They have prior two collaboration with Xantia watches, Xantia watch, which is the jumping hour with a stone dial. That's pretty interesting as well. Do feel free to check those out. Right. So the very first criteria that we're going to score here, is it worth it at retail, right? At the pre-order last month, it was priced at $1099 US, right? For a mother of pearl dial, right? As a limited edition. And this is a design that is not common at all. Movement, a Miyota movement, nothing really to shout about, but nonetheless, it's an automatic watch, right? In comparison to the price of what we had, or the previous episode we talked about with the Denizen, right? I think that draws a pretty interesting comparison, right? But also a caveat here, Woody and I have not seen or held the watch in person, so we are only purely basing off the spec sheet and what's available to us, right? But having looked at the spec sheet and what was provided, I would say that's quite a lot of value to ask for, right? Like, in what price point can you get a engraved mother of pearl dial, especially in a design that is really nice, right? At 1099. In Denizen, you only get a quartz, right? So, that being said, I would say for what you pay for, that's really, really, really great value, right? So I think that's a full one for me. Nothing really much to add on. You have, as you mentioned, it comes with the full set of a leather pouch, a art card as well, and the box itself, it's nicely designed as well, right? So all in all, it's a very wonderful package that comes together, right? So that's it for me. Over to you, Woody.
So I think it's a very interesting piece on many levels. Now, it case-wise, nothing to really shout about, right? And the movement side, nothing to shout about. But if you think about it, like the watch on my wrist right now is a Grand Seiko. When you think of textured dials, whether it's a stamped or whatnot, no matter how intricate it gets, that's part of the draw to watch enthusiasts. So what they've been able to do, Selten and Watch & Co. have been able to do, is pick a material that can stand the CNC treatment, yet when you zoom in to level of detail, you see the intricate details as well, and there's a story to it. Very rare. Very rare where the design and the execution comes across as very cohesive. I also like the touch that they got an artist to do a special print for it. That comes with every piece that you buy as well. I was recently when I was in London attending a show. One of the nice things is if you're able to get a customized drawing, or an artist is something that becomes more and more common nowadays, where part of the personalization is you have an art piece of the watch, or a hand-drawn version of something as well, right? Given that watches are really a convergence of art and machinery, right? And that it plays up more to the artistic side, and I think that's always a nice touch, the subjectivity to the whole thing, but it's nice. And I think for that sort of money, if you combine all of it together, you get a decent strap. Sometimes brands cheap out on straps. This is a decent strap maker. You've combined it with a very well executed design dial, robust movement, and then you throw in a very unique art piece that goes along with it as well, right? That's an easy one for that sort of money. You're hard pressed to get anything of that sort of value at retail from other brands as well. And this is why the excitement is, if you care to look and you're part of the watch community, this is what the joy of the micro brand space, right? If you're able to connect the dots and be in the know when something like this gets put together, there's not a lot of marketing money that's put into that piece, so to speak, or rather, the whatever you're getting is more than what is normally on the price tag, because it's a lot more heart and soul that's gone into it, and it's usually a collaboration of different players that put something together, and it's not like I mark up upon my markup upon my markup sort of thing that you can almost mathematically see, right? In this case, it doesn't feel like that, and I think kudos to Watch Co and Co and Selten for pulling that off. So full one from me.
Right. So I think one thing that I'm very curious as well to find out in terms of direction for this, but that's going to be another episode when we interview Jackie in a future date, right? But at least right now, I find that it's very welcoming for a prominent watch club slash community to create or to have a collaboration in a watch at this price point, right? And they also partner with a Hong Kong watchmaker as well. And the reason why is that nowadays you see a lot of other watch clubs have started to be, I say, a little bit elitist, right? Because these are people who own watches that are in like six figures, US dollars easily, right? And this 1099 means in a way on paper means nothing to them at the price point, right? They could have gone with a more prominent indie watchmaker, and if you want to go guilloche, they could probably find someone that does a hand guilloche movement, something that is really really high expensive. But they decide to go in the other direction and come up with a piece that is very accessible. And I find that incredibly welcoming to the watch community, and they're not in a way gatekeeping that. So I would say that's a very, very good welcome. But yeah, we'll find out more, and if that's actually the thought process of this entire collaboration when we interview Jackie, right? But overdone. Moving on to the next criteria, which is it worth it on the secondary market, right? So this watch is just closed pre-order. Only a handful of people have access to this watch at the moment. So I can only speculate the particular price would be in the future, right? It being limited edition, you definitely do yield some demand, right? Especially for those who have missed the boat. So I would say this, right? It being priced at 1099, I think that's incredibly steal. To a certain extent, it's probably a little bit undervalued as well, right? So I can see a scenario that if you really like it and you really want it, a small price premium to pay, it's still acceptable in my book, right? Um, However, if it just gone overhyped and you end up yielding two times, three times, and so on, personally, I would probably buy something else. Right, I'll probably look for something else available, or wait for the next collaboration, so on. So very much depending on how the price point would be. If it's not too crazy, I would say go for it. I would say even if it's above the retail price that you initially offered, it's still worth it at a small premium. That's how I view it. Yeah. So with that, I'll give it a 0.5. Right. Over to you, Woody.
So I think in this particular regard, and generally the space of speculation is actually James' expertise. I'm hopeless at it, right? So in terms of where I look at secondary market, I don't know whether there is one. And I try my best to look at it this way. This was a watch that you're meant to have gotten when it was released. If you missed the window, likely try not to feed the beast, try not to spend too much of a premium on it. But it's a community of collectors that were made aware of this timepiece. There was a very immense blast of media that went during the release, and it generally generated some hype of its own. I wouldn't recommend buying it at premium, but I also belong to a school of thought where this watch is more than a sum of its parts. So if you missed out because you hesitated, and maybe that's where the value will be found, right? I reckon it's more a case of that. So I wouldn't recommend buying and paying it for premium for it. The thing about micro brands for me is if you know about the watch because it's part of a community, you have interaction with the founder group, the collectors group or whatnot, that's what makes it even extra special. And that's something money cannot buy. So what I'm getting at is don't try and compensate that with what you're paying for. It's very different to buying a well-known brand. You're not buying into a brand. You're buying into an experience. You're buying into a community of people. So try and find the value there instead. So I'd not rank it on the secondary market, except if you were already aware of it, you're part of the community, and you went like, not sure, maybe I'll give it a miss, and then now you're feeling the FOMO, right? That's when I'll go like, yeah, if you can get a good price out of somebody in that community, and I think James is the one that pointed this out in previous episodes. Most likely the folks that buy this are watch enthusiasts who have many pieces, and they'll take care of it really well. So if you can get a friend price or whatnot between a community, I'd say go for it. But because there's so many criteria set on it, I'll just rank it a 0 for now. I give full marks for it at retail. Secondary, I just don't know. But that's my point of view. Back to you, James.
Fair enough. Well said. Well said. All right. Moving on to the very next criteria, right, which is aesthetic, right? So aesthetic over here, I would just say it's stunning, right? It just when you look at it, it's stunning. It doesn't look like anything else. Uh, I from the photos and videos I can see it's very prone to light play as well, right? So you have different shades of color that lights up the mother of pearl, and because it's engraved as well, the light dances of it is very prominent under the light as well, right? Which is something that I am personally really fond of, right? I just like how the watches in a way have its own characteristics when shine upon different lightings, right? So for me, that is an absolute big plus, right? The back of the watch is you have a design and several engraving involved in there as well. I would say it's nicely done for the movement that it has. But overall, the star of this is ultimately in the dial, and I think they killed it, right? The only downside I would say is with the combination of the skeleton hands, some people may find it really hard to read. And I would agree. But ultimately, the owners of these watches pretty much don't care, right? You will be probably staring at a dial more than anything, right? So yeah, with that, I have to say I would give it a full mark for this. The dial is just so nice, right? I don't care if it's CNC versus hand engraved, hand guilloche, and so on. It's just nice, and at this price point, I can't complain as well, right? So it's a full mark for me over here. Over to you, Woody.
So I think the interesting thing, just to contextualize, this is a stereotype I'm about to share, right? You know, in the watch industry, whenever mother of pearl shows up, it tends to meant to be targeted to women audience and female buyers. The fact that they were able to take that stereotype, put something like this on, and it's just a wow factor to any watch enthusiast, and even I, as someone who's usually quite particular about what goes on the dial and whatnot, I was actually really stunned by when the shots came out of this. And credit to Enthused for the photography. It was amazing stuff that they brought out the best of it. And I'll also go on record to say this, and my better half has reminded me, right? I've never really been a fan of stone dials or whatnot. James has always won more for this, right? And when the trend started to come out, she was the one that told me, it's going to be in trend. You wait for it, and I just rolled my eyes and laughed it off, right? And then she's now getting the better of me of that, and like 2 back-to-back episodes of stone dials and special materials. I concede, I was wrong, right? But in this case, beautifully done, beautifully executed. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, right? You normally only think about this in Japanese watchmakers where they do the stamped, very high detailed stamping. And even that, you can't get something for this price at all, right? So I think it's an easy one there. Very well done. To be able to take what's conventionally thought of by watch brands as something that only appeals to women, to now be making it in such a way that appeals to everyone. And enthusiasts are the hardest people to please, and they've done that really, really well. My hat's off to you. Back to you, James.
Fair enough. And before anyone give this watch shit on not utilizing hand guilloche or hand engraving and so on, I just going to remind everyone that this watch is priced at 1099, right? Having a hand and guilloche dial is going to increase this price by tremendously, right? And you got to know that all the fancy dials that you see from Grand Seiko as well, those are pretty much machine made too. Yeah. So there's only a handful out there that's actually hand engraved. So I wouldn't give shit to the Selten for this, right? So yeah. Moving on to the next criteria, which is horological feature, right? As mentioned, this particular watch is being made with a Miyota movement. So with that being said, nothing fancy. But on a plus point, you can look at it, it's probably easy to service, right? So I'll just look at it on the bright side. But yeah, really nothing to shout about here. Yeah, so it's a 0. But no faults to it as well. It's meant to be a zero. You can't ask for too much. You can't have it both ways. You can have it at a cheaper price point and have a great movement in there. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, right? So yeah, it's zero, but it's meant to be a zero. Yep. Over to you, Woody.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I think if we had defined these categories different, maybe we'd have given a score for this, because I think the feature here is really the combination of visual things that have been added to the dial, which is why we scored a full for, or at least for me, a full for the aesthetics as well. Horological features wise, as someone who's familiar, or rather has owned Miyotas before, they are decent movements. Think of them like the new Seiko movements, if you like. They work, nothing to shout about. It's not really in the case construction, as I mentioned as well. It's really all in the visual appeal. So you get a decent watch for the price that you're asking for. Nothing much to add there. Zero from me.
Great. Right. The particular last criteria we have over here, right, which is the wearability, right? Just looking straight on the spec sheet and looking at the wrist shots that were out at about as well, right? At 40, is it 45.5 luck to luck, was it?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. 45.5 luck to luck. I think that is very, very wearable, right? Especially it being on a leather strap. I think that is something that could be easily worn by both gender as well. Not too big, not too small either. I would think is a very nice size at 39 millimeters, right? Very, very, very wearable, right? As you can see on the very, very first image that we've shown as well, this is both worn by Swiss Beats and Alicia Keys. Both are able to pull it off with no issue, right? So just basing on the spec sheet itself, I can imagine that most Asians do not have problems with this as well, especially when this is created by Asians, right? So I do hope that's the case, right? So it's a full one for me over here. Yeah, great job. And yep, over to you, Woody.
Yeah, as James mentioned, we have not tried it on ourselves, but I've refined the art of being able to look at pictures from all angles and looking at the numbers and proportions to figure out how it would roughly wear. I would say job well done. You have a sub 10 millimeter watch, still enough dial presence at 39 millimeters, yet a shorter lug to lug that allows wearability even for the tiny wrist stripe. Full endorsement from me. It's like almost a blind vote, right? I just have to look at the images, look at the profile, look at the numbers. It tells me all I need to know. It will wear really well. So full marks. Back to you, James.
Fair enough. All right, that sums it up well. So that makes it into a 3.5 for myself and 3 from Woody, and brings it up to a overall of 6.5 out of 10. Right. So yeah, do feel free to check out the watch in Selten's website, in several YouTubes available as well, and do check out more about Watch Ho and Co. and also Jackie himself. And we look forward to having him at our podcast, right, in Watches and People, sometime in the close future, right? So we have that lined up, and we'll hear more about the idea and the conceptualizations of the watch, but ultimately it's a piece that is really, really interesting. And like I said many times in the past couple of episodes as well, interesting slash creative pieces are really hard to come by in this day and age, especially most people are playing it very safe, especially in order to really draw in the crowd. It's easier to play it safe than not, right? So credits to credits where due. This is a very, very nicely designed piece, and at this price point, it is, I would say, an absolute steal, right? Any closing words, Woody?
No, I'm actually more keen when we speak to them, because I'm interested to see what comes next. Like I mentioned, I didn't really know about them, didn't know about Selten, but with the capabilities now all in display, right? It makes you wonder what will come up next, and like what I'm actually keen to find out what Selten can also do beyond that. How much of it was really Selten, and how much was just the community knowing all the different players to put this piece together, right? I think that's where all my curiosity lies, because I'm keen to know what's next, for what is possible and what's next. That's where the excitement is.
Fair enough. So I think that's a great way to wrap this up. Yes, so that's it for the episode today, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.